Manhattan, Christmas Eve. Ice crystals scattered across Fifth Avenue, like broken glass catching streetlight. The Thornhill Industries holiday gala had ended an hour ago, but Ethan Thornhill still wore his tuxedo, walking aimlessly through crowds of strangers rushing toward warmth. 34 years old. CEO of a tech security firm worth $200 million. Featured in Forbes. Invited to every elite gathering in New York. Tonight, he had no one waiting. His phone buzzed. Another automated message from his calendar app reminding him tomorrow was Christmas. He silenced it, shoving both hands deeper into his coat pockets. The snow fell heavier now, muffling the usual city chaos. Ethan turned down a quieter street near Bryant Park, away from the holiday shoppers and their forced cheer. His breath formed small clouds that dissipated quickly. Like everything else in his life lately. That's when he saw her. A woman sat on the steps of a closed bookstore, hunched against the cold. Her coat was too thin for December weather. Dark hair fell across her face as she stared at nothing in particular. No cardboard sign. No outstretched hand. Just stillness. Ethan slowed his pace, intending to walk past. He'd learned years ago not to get involved. The city taught you that lesson early and often, but she looked up. Their eyes met for 3 seconds. Maybe 4. In that brief moment, Ethan recognized something he'd been avoiding in mirrors for months, the particular emptiness of someone who'd stopped expecting anything to change. "Sorry," she said quietly, as if apologizing for existing in his line of sight. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Do you think, could you maybe stay, just for a little while?" Not a request for money, not a plea for help, just a question. Ethan stopped walking. The snow continued falling. People passed by without noticing either of them. The woman wrapped her arms tighter around herself, waiting for him to leave like everyone else probably did. Instead, Ethan heard himself say, "Have you eaten today?" The Blue Moon Diner occupied a corner lot that time seemed to have forgotten. Chrome fixtures from the 50s, red vinyl booths patched with duct tape. The kind of place that stayed open all night because closing would mean admitting defeat. Ethan held the door. The woman hesitated before entering, as if warmth itself required permission. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. A tired waitress looked up from wiping down the counter, her expression suggesting she'd seen every variation of human desperation this city could offer. "Sit anywhere, hon," she called out. They chose a booth near the window. Ethan ordered coffee and pancakes for both of them without asking. The woman didn't protest. She wrapped both hands around the water glass the waitress brought, absorbing its coolness rather than warmth, as if testing whether this moment was real. "I'm Ethan, Claire." She said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. The coffee arrived first. Claire added 3 sugars, stirred slowly. Ethan noticed her hands paint under the fingernails, small scars on the knuckles. Hands that made things. "I wasn't always like this," she said suddenly, not looking at him. "I had an apartment in Brooklyn. A studio space. I taught art classes at a community center in Bushwick." Ethan sipped his coffee, said nothing. People didn't need fixing in these moments. They needed witnessing. "My sister got sick. Ovarian cancer, stage 4. I took care of her for 18 months. Used everything savings, credit cards, sold my car. When she died in March, I had nothing left except hospital debt and an eviction notice." Claire's voice remained steady. No tears, just facts delivered like weather reports. "The community center couldn't hold my position. My landlord rented to someone else. I've been staying with a friend in Queens, but her lease is up next week." She finally looked at Ethan. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. You asked if I'd eaten. I'm explaining why the answer was no." The pancakes arrived. Claire picked up her fork, but didn't eat immediately. Instead, she studied Ethan's face with the careful attention of someone trained to notice details. "Your turn," she said. "My turn? Why are you here? Men in $2,000 tuxedos don't usually end up in diners at midnight with strangers." Ethan smiled despite himself. "You can tell it's $2,000? I can tell it fits perfectly. That means tailored, which means expensive, which means you have money and nobody to spend Christmas with, or you wouldn't be walking alone in the snow. Fair enough. I spent the evening at my company's holiday party, Ethan began. 200 employees. Everyone very excited about their bonuses. Very grateful for the premium health insurance and the profit-sharing program I implemented this year. He paused, adding cream to his coffee even though he drank it black. Not one person asked how I was doing. They thanked me for things. They praised my business decisions. They laughed at my jokes. But nobody actually spoke to me. Because you're the boss. Because I'm apparently not a person anymore, just a function. Claire cut into her pancakes. That's the cost of success, right? The higher you climb, the fewer people can reach you. Is that really how it works? I don't know. I never climbed high enough to find out. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, the snow continued its quiet accumulation. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed their monotonous song. The waitress refilled their coffee without being asked. Ethan noticed Claire's coat hanging on the hook, fraying at the cuffs, a missing button near the collar. Her boots had cracks in the leather that let moisture seep through. December in New York demanded better armor than that. There's a 24-hour department store 3 blocks from here, he said carefully. Let me buy you a warmer coat. Claire set down her fork. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's... He searched for the right words. It's what you'd do if you saw someone drowning. You'd throw them a rope. This is just a rope that happens to be a winter coat. I'm not drowning, neither am I, supposedly. But here we both are at midnight in a diner, the only 2 people who had nowhere else to be. Claire studied him for a long moment. Then she picked up her coffee cup. Okay, she said quietly. But just a coat. Nothing else. The department store blazed with post-Christmas sale signs. Employees looked exhausted from the holiday rush, their forced cheer wearing thin in the fluorescent brightness. Claire moved through the coat section with purpose, checking price tags and shaking her head at anything over $50. Ethan followed at a distance, letting her maintain the illusion of control. She selected a basic black puffer jacket from the clearance rack. Practical. Warm enough. Completely lacking any personality. Try this one, Ethan said, pulling a charcoal wool coat from a different display. Better construction, actually designed to handle New York winters. That's $300, and it'll last 5 years instead of 5 months. Claire crossed her arms. I agreed to a coat, not a wardrobe intervention. You agreed to warmth. That thin jacket won't cut it when January hits. They stared at each other. The exhausted sales associate pretended to organize hangers nearby, clearly hoping to avoid whatever argument was brewing. Finally, Claire sighed. Fine. But I'm paying you back. Sure, Ethan agreed, knowing he'd find a way to make that impossible. She tried on the wool coat. It fit perfectly structured without being stiff, warm without bulk. Claire caught her reflection in a mirror and paused, as if surprised to recognize herself, looking put together. There's a scarf that matches, the sales associate offered tentatively, sensing a possible commission. No, Claire said. Yes, Ethan countered, already picking up the dark gray cashmere blend. Claire opened her mouth to protest. But Ethan wrapped the scarf around her neck with surprising gentleness, adjusting it so the soft material framed her face properly. There, he said. Now you won't freeze. For the first time that night, Claire smiled. Not a polite smile, not a grateful smile, a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her face from tired to luminous. You're very stubborn, she said. So I've been told. At the register, Ethan added gloves and wool socks, while Claire examined a display of clearance ornaments. She picked up a small glass snowflake, turning it so the light caught its facets. My sister loved these, she said softly. She collected them. Had dozens hanging in her apartment window. Get it, Ethan said. It's frivolous. It's $5. It's not practical. Ethan took the ornament from her hands and placed it on the counter with everything else. Sometimes impractical things are the most important ones. Walking back into the cold felt different now. Claire wore her new armor against winter, and somehow that small change made the night less hostile. The snow still fell. The wind still bit, but they were prepared for it now. "Thank you," Claire said as they stood on the corner, the Blue Moon Diner glowing behind them. "Where are you staying tonight?" Ethan asked. The question hung between them. Claire looked away. "I have options," she said, which both of them knew meant she didn't. Ethan pulled out his phone, called his driver. "I have a guest room. Clean sheets. No expectations. You can leave whenever you want." I'm not being kind." Ethan interrupted. "I'm being selfish. I don't want to go back to an empty apartment tonight. And I don't want you sleeping in the cold. So we're both getting something out of this arrangement." The car arrived before Claire could argue further. A sleek black sedan, driven by Marcus, who'd worked for Ethan for 6 years and knew better than to ask questions. "Evening, Mr. Thornhill," Marcus said, opening the rear door. "Marcus, this is Claire. We're headed home." If Marcus found anything unusual about picking up his employer and a stranger at 1 a.m. on Christmas Eve, his face didn't show it. Claire slid into the leather interior, and Ethan followed. As the car pulled away from the curb, he watched her reflection in the window. A woman trying very hard not to hope for anything, because hoping hurt worse than expecting nothing. He understood that feeling perfectly. The elevator required a key card for the penthouse level. Claire stood very still as they ascended, watching the floor numbers climb. Ethan noticed her breathing had quickened slightly. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Just wondering if this is how every horror movie starts. Usually the woman in the horror movie doesn't get a wool coat and cashmere scarf first." Fair point. The elevator opened directly into Ethan's apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed Manhattan like a glittering circuit board 43 stories below. The space was immaculate, all clean lines and carefully chosen furniture that looked expensive because it was. It also looked utterly lifeless. Claire stepped inside slowly, taking in the minimalist decor. Chrome and glass. Abstract art on walls painted in shades of gray. Not a single personal photograph. No clutter. No evidence that anyone actually lived here. "This is beautiful," she said carefully, but it doesn't feel like a home. It feels like a very expensive hotel room." Ethan shrugged off his coat. "My decorator called it modern masculine sophistication. Your decorator is very good at making things look perfect and feel empty." It should have been an insult, but Claire said it without judgment. Just an observation from someone who understood the difference between shelter and sanctuary. "Guest room is down that hall," Ethan said, pointing. "Bathrooms attached. There should be fresh towels. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen." Claire didn't move toward the guest room. Instead, she walked to the windows, pressing one hand against the cold glass. "How long have you lived here?" 3 years. "And in 3 years, you never thought to add anything." "Warm?" Ethan joined her at the window. Below them, the city continued its restless movement. Even at this hour, even on Christmas Eve, New York refused to sleep. "I work a lot," he said. "Home is just where I sleep, between meetings." "That's sad. That's success." Claire turned to face him. "Those aren't the same thing." The heating system clicked on, filling the silence between them. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's door opened and closed. Life happening everywhere, except in this perfect, empty space. "I'm going to make tea," Claire announced suddenly. "Do you have tea?" "I have a professional-grade espresso machine." "Of course you do. Tea bags?" "Probably somewhere." Claire headed toward the kitchen, and Ethan followed. She opened cabinets with the unself-conscious confidence of someone who'd spent years making herself at home in other people's spaces. In the third cabinet, she found a dusty box of Earl Grey, probably left by a cleaning service. "Mugs?" she asked. Ethan pointed to another cabinet. Claire pulled down 2 mugs, plain white, never used. She filled the electric kettle and waited for it to boil, leaning against the marble counter. "When did you last have someone over?" she asked. "Define have someone over." "Friends, family. Anyone who wasn't here for business." Ethan thought about it. Really thought about it. I can't remember, he admitted. The kettle clicked off. Claire poured hot water over tea bags, the simple domestic ritual somehow making the space feel less hostile. She handed him a mug and cradled her own in both hands. My sister used to say that loneliness isn't about being alone, Claire said quietly. It's about being unseen. You can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. Sounds like she was wise. She was. Right up until the end. Claire sipped her tea. The last thing she told me was to stop being afraid of needing people. She said needing people isn't weakness. It's just being human. And did you stop being afraid? No, but I'm working on it. They drank their tea standing in the kitchen. Neither of them moving toward the logical conclusion of the evening, Claire going to the guest room, Ethan to his own bed, both retreating to separate solitudes. I should let you sleep, Claire finally said. I don't sleep much. Me neither. Another pause. Then Claire set down her mug. Do you have any paper? I think better when I'm drawing. Ethan opened a drawer, found printer paper and a pen. Claire took them to the living room. Settling on the floor near the window, she started sketching quick, confident lines, forming shapes Ethan couldn't identify yet. He sat on the couch above her, watching. The pen moved across paper with quiet certainty. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, for the first time in 3 years, the penthouse felt inhabited. Tell me about your sister, Ethan said. And Claire did. Ethan woke on the couch, disoriented. Gray morning light filtered through windows. His phone showed 6:47 a.m. Christmas morning. Claire was gone. For 3 seconds, panic gripped him, the irrational fear that last night had been some kind of fever dream, that he'd hallucinated companionship out of desperate loneliness. Then he smelled coffee. He found her in the kitchen, standing by the espresso machine with a look of deep concentration. She'd figured out how to operate the complex Italian device and was currently pulling a shot with surprising competency. You're up, she said without turning around. You made coffee. I found instructions online. This machine is more complicated than most cars. She handed him an espresso in a proper demi-tasse cup, somehow managing to create acceptable crema despite being a complete amateur. Ethan tasted it. Not perfect, but genuinely good. Where did you learn about coffee? I worked in a cafe in Brooklyn for 6 months. Before the art classes, Claire made her own espresso, leaning against the counter. I was going to leave this morning. Wrote you a note and everything. But I realized I didn't want to, and I figured if you regretted last night, you'd say something. I don't regret it. Good. Because I also figured out how to use your oven, and I'm making breakfast. Ethan blinked. I don't have food. You have eggs, bread, and butter. That's enough. 20 minutes later, they sat at the dining table. Ethan had never actually used for dining. Usually it held his laptop and stacks of documents. Claire had made simple French toast, using cinnamon she'd found in the spice cabinet and vanilla extract from who knew where. This is good, Ethan said, surprised. My sister taught me. She said every woman should know at least 3 recipes by heart in case of emergencies. Is this an emergency? 2 lonely people eating breakfast on Christmas morning? Absolutely, an emergency. They ate in comfortable silence. Beyond the windows, Manhattan looked softened by snow. Ethan's phone buzzed repeatedly, holiday messages from business associates, automated greetings from apps, reminder notifications. He ignored all of them. What would you normally do today? Claire asked. Work, probably. Answer emails. Review quarterly projections. On Christmas, the markets don't care about holidays. Claire set down her fork. That's bleak. That's reality. No. Reality is that you've built a life that doesn't require you to be human anymore. You're just a function that optimizes resources. The words should have stung, but Claire said them gently, the way you'd point out that someone had food in their teeth, embarrassing but ultimately helpful information. What would you do today? Ethan asked. If you could do anything? Claire smiled. Honestly? I'd do this. Sit somewhere warm, drink good coffee, talk to someone who actually listens. Maybe watch a movie. Maybe just watch the snow. That's it? Simple pleasures matter most when you've gone without them. Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time, his father's name appeared on the screen. He declined the call. Family? Claire asked. A parent who prefers I only exist in news articles about successful entrepreneurs. Ah. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, but disappointed in who you've become. Relationship. Exactly that. Claire collected their plates, moving around his kitchen with easy familiarity. My mom disowned me when I dropped out of business school to pursue art, said I was wasting my potential. We didn't speak for 5 years, until my sister got sick. Did you reconcile? No. She showed up at the funeral, told me I looked terrible, and left. Some bridges don't get rebuilt. She washed dishes by hand, even though Ethan had a dishwasher. He watched her work, noticing how different the space felt with another person in it. Not just occupied. Alive. Stay, he said quietly. Claire turned off the water. What? Stay. At least through the weekend. There's a storm coming tomorrow. And... He paused, trying to find words that didn't sound desperate or presumptuous. And I don't want to be alone. And you don't have anywhere to go. So stay. Claire dried her hands slowly on a towel. Outside, church bells rang somewhere in the distance, marking Christmas morning. Okay, she said finally, until the snow stops. Then we'll see. By afternoon, Claire had transformed the penthouse from sterile showroom into something approaching habitable. She'd raided the storage closet and found boxes of decorations that came with the apartment things Ethan had never bothered unpacking. Now, a small artificial tree stood in the corner, decorated with mismatched ornaments and the glass snowflake from last night. Claire had strung lights along one window, arranged candles on the coffee table, and somehow made the space feel intentional rather than abandoned. Where did you learn to do this? Ethan asked, watching her adjust an ornament. My sister and I used to decorate for every holiday. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Easter. She said, if you're going to live somewhere, you should make it feel loved. Loved, lived in, personal. A reflection of who you are, not just what you can afford. Ethan sat on the couch, nursing coffee. I don't know who I am anymore. Just what I do. Claire stepped back from the tree, assessing her work. Then maybe it's time to figure that out. She picked up sketch paper from the floor, the drawings from last night. Claire had filled several pages with images. The diner, the snowy street, the view from the window. Quick studies that captured mood rather than detail. Can I show you something? She asked. Ethan nodded. Claire sat beside him, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through photos, images of murals painted on brick walls, colorful installations in community spaces, children clustered around easels. This is what I did before everything fell apart, she said. I taught art to kids who couldn't afford classes, set up painting stations in parks, turned alley walls into public galleries. The photos showed a different Claire smiling, paint splattered, surrounded by people. Alive in a way that last night's version hadn't been. Why did you stop? Ethan asked. Money, time. When my sister got sick, everything else became secondary. Claire set down her phone. But also fear. My mom was right that art doesn't pay reliably. Every month was a gamble. Would I make rent? Could I buy supplies? What if I failed? Did you fail? I survived. That's different from succeeding. Ethan understood that distinction perfectly. His company was thriving. His investments paid dividends. His net worth increased quarterly. But sitting in his expensive apartment on Christmas afternoon, he felt like the poorest person alive. What if you could start again? He asked. What would you do differently? Claire considered this. I'd stop trying to do everything alone. I'd ask for help. I'd accept that needing support doesn't make you weak. It makes you realistic. She picked up a pencil, started sketching on fresh paper. Her hand moved with practiced confidence. creating shapes that gradually resolved into a portrait. Ethan realized she was drawing him not as he appeared in business magazines, but as he'd looked last night in the diner. Tired. Uncertain. Human. "This is how I see you," Claire said, showing him the finished sketch. It was unsettling to see himself through someone else's eyes. The man in the drawing looked lost, but not defeated. Alone, but not beyond reach. "I don't recognize that person," Ethan said quietly. "Then maybe you should get to know him." Evening arrived early in winter. Claire made them grilled cheese sandwiches, using Ethan's industrial kitchen like a battlefield command center. They ate on the floor by the window, watching the city lights emerge as darkness fell. "Tell me about your company," Claire said. "It's a cybersecurity firm. We protect financial institutions from data breaches." "That sounds important." "It is. Boring, but important." "Why boring?" "Because I've optimized all the interesting parts away. Everything runs on systems now. Protocols, procedures. I've made myself redundant." Claire took a bite of her sandwich. "So, change it." "Change what?" "Change how you run things. Add the interesting parts back in. You built this company, you can rebuild it however you want." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Ethan opened his mouth to explain all the complex reasons why wholesale business transformation was impossible. The board expectations, the shareholder demands, the competitive pressures. But sitting on the floor of his living room, eating grilled cheese with a woman he'd met yesterday, those reasons suddenly seemed like excuses. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's a start," Claire said. Later, as full darkness settled, Claire asked if Ethan had any music. He showed her the stereo system, another expensive piece of equipment he never used. She connected her phone, scrolled through playlists. Soft piano music filled the apartment. Something classical, something that matched the snowfall outside. "My sister loved this piece," Claire said. Sadie. Gymnopody number 1. The melody drifted through the space, melancholy but not sad. The tree lights blinked slowly. Candles flickered. For the first time since moving in, Ethan's apartment felt like somewhere worth being. Claire stood, extending her hand. "Dance with me." "I don't dance. Everyone dances. They just don't all do it well." Ethan took her hand, let her pull him to his feet. They moved slowly in the small space between furniture, not following any particular rhythm. Just swaying, just being present with another person. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly. "For what?" "For making this place feel real." Claire rested her head against his shoulder. "Thank you for letting me stay." They remained there, moving slightly, as the music played and the snow fell and Christmas night deepened around them. The next morning, Ethan woke early and made a decision. He'd spent half the night thinking about Claire's story, the lost art classes, the community programs that folded, the talent wasted because of circumstances beyond her control. He could fix this. He had resources, connections, the ability to make things happen. So he did. While Claire slept, Ethan made calls, sent emails, pulled strings. By 9 a.m., he'd arranged a meeting with the director of the Manhattan Arts Foundation, a woman he'd met at various charity functions. He proposed a new community arts initiative, fully funded by Thornhill Industries. He mentioned a talented artist he knew who'd be perfect to run the program. By 10 a.m., everything was arranged. By 11 a.m., he had confirmation that the foundation would reach out to Claire about a position starting in January. Salary, benefits, supply budget, everything covered. Ethan felt satisfied, accomplished, like he'd solved a problem efficiently. He was still congratulating himself when Claire emerged from the guest room, checking her phone with a confused expression. "I just got an email from the Manhattan Arts Foundation," she said slowly. "They want to interview me about running a new community program." Ethan smiled. "That's great. It's from Christina Valdez, who, according to her LinkedIn, works with Thornhill Industries on corporate philanthropy initiatives." The smile faded. Claire looked at him, understanding dawning across her face. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. "I made some calls. Pulled together funding for." "For what?" A program you invented so you could give me a job? It's not like that. The foundation needed. The foundation needed exactly what you told them to need. Claire's voice remained level, but Ethan could hear the anger underneath. You created a position tailored for me, funded by your money, coordinated through your connections. I was trying to help. No, you were trying to fix me. Like I'm a problem to be solved, rather than a person making my own choices. Claire, did it occur to you to ask what I wanted? Or did you just assume that because I'm broke and homeless, I'd be grateful for whatever scraps you arranged? That's not fair. Fair? You're right, that's not fair. What's not fair is that you met someone who trusted you with their story, and immediately decided you knew better than they did what they needed. Claire grabbed her new coat from the hook by the door. Where are you going? Ethan asked. Anywhere else. It's still snowing. The temperature dropped below freezing. I'll manage. I've been managing for months. Please don't leave like this. Let me explain. Claire turned to face him fully. Explain what? That you're used to buying solutions? That you think money and connections can fix anything? I know that, Ethan. Everyone knows that. The problem is you confused helping with controlling. I wasn't trying to control you. Yes, you were. You just convinced yourself it was kindness. She pulled on gloves. You know what the saddest part is? I was starting to think you actually saw me. Not as a charity case or a project, just as a person. But you couldn't help yourself. You saw someone struggling and immediately needed to swoop in and save them. I didn't mean, I know you didn't. That's what makes it worse. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Claire, wait. But she was gone, disappearing into the elevator before Ethan could follow. He stood in the doorway, watching the numbers descend. Watched until they reached the ground floor. Watched until he accepted she wasn't coming back. The apartment felt colder than it had 2 days ago. The decorations Claire had arranged now seemed like props in a theater after the show ended. Evidence of something that almost happened, but didn't. Ethan's phone buzzed. Christina Valdez, thanking him for his generous donation, and confirming the interview with Claire was scheduled for next week. He deleted the message. Then he called her back and canceled everything. The next 72 hours blurred together. Ethan tried to work. Opened his laptop. Stared at spreadsheets. Closed it again. He tried to sleep, lay in bed. Watched ceiling shadows. Got up. He tried to fix things. Drafted apology messages. Deleted them. Drafted new ones. Deleted those too. Nothing helped. On the third day, he forced himself outside. The snow had stopped, but Manhattan remained locked in deep cold. Ethan walked without destination, letting his feet choose the path. They chose Bryant Park. The bookstore where he'd first seen Claire was closed for New Year's renovation, but someone had used the steps as a canvas. Chalk drawings covered the concrete images of winter scenes, families gathered around fires, hands clasping hands. In the center, larger than the others, was a drawing of 2 figures sitting at a diner counter. Above them, in careful letters, even strangers can be kind. Even kindness can be complicated. Ethan knelt down despite the cold concrete, studying the drawing. Claire's style, her particular way of capturing emotion in simple lines. A message left for him. Or maybe just for the city. He pulled out his phone and called his father. Ethan, this is unexpected. Gerald Thornhill's voice carried the same clipped efficiency it always did. Every word measured. Every pause calculated. Hi, Dad. Is something wrong with the company? The company's fine. Then why are you calling? Fair question. Ethan hadn't initiated a personal call to his father in 2 years. All their interactions happened at board meetings or annual dinners, arranged by his father's secretary. Do you remember Mom? Ethan asked. Silence on the other end. Then, of course I remember your mother. What kind of question is that? What do you remember about her? Ethan, if this is some kind of, please, Dad, just answer. More silence. Ethan could hear traffic in the background. His father was probably in a car between meetings. Always moving. Always busy. She loved Christmas, Gerald finally said. Made a spectacle of it every year. Insisted on real trees. Baked cookies from scratch. Played carols too loud. You hated it. I tolerated it. For her. Did you love her? That's a ridiculous question. Did you? Gerald Thornhill exhaled. Yes, in my own way. What way was that? The way men of my generation loved. Through providing. Through building security. Through ensuring our families never wanted for anything. Except connection. Excuse me? She didn't want security, Dad. She wanted someone to sit with her and listen to the carols. She wanted someone to help bake the cookies. She wanted someone present, not just productive. Your mother understood my responsibilities. No, she accepted them. That's different. The traffic sounds continued. A horn honked. Somewhere, people were living lives that required presence. Why are you calling me, Ethan? Because I just made the same mistake you did. I met someone who needed presence, and I offered them money and solutions instead. And they left. Just like Mom left. Your mother died. After 20 years of being alone in a house with someone who was never actually there. Gerald said nothing. I'm tired, Dad. Tired of being successful and empty. Tired of fixing things instead of experiencing them. Tired of becoming you. That's unfair, is it? We work the same hours. Live in the same kind of sterile apartments. Measure our worth in quarterly earnings. When's the last time someone asked how you were doing? And you actually told them the truth? More silence. I don't know, Gerald admitted quietly. Me neither. Until 3 days ago. Ethan ended the call and continued walking through the cold. New Year's Eve arrived gray and bitter. Ethan spent the morning deleting emails from people, inviting him to parties he wouldn't attend. Spent the afternoon staring at the decorations Claire had arranged, unable to take them down. Around 3 p.m., he forced himself outside again. The walking helped. Gave his restlessness somewhere to go. His feet carried him north, through Manhattan, past Central Park's frozen landscapes, beyond the museum district. He didn't realize where he was going until he arrived. The Harlem Community Arts Center occupied a converted warehouse on 125th Street. Someone had painted the exterior with a massive mural, children holding paintbrushes, crayons, musical instruments. Above them, in bright letters. Art is how we show the world who we are. Ethan almost kept walking, but through the large windows, he saw movement, colors, life. He went inside. The space exploded with creative chaos. 20 or 30 children clustered around tables, working on projects. Some painted, some drew, some built sculptures from recycled materials. Adult volunteers circulated, offering guidance and encouragement. And in the center of it all, wearing a paint-splattered apron and laughing as a small boy showed her his creation, was Claire. She looked different than she had in his apartment. Not just healthier, though she did look healthier. She looked present, engaged, alive in a way that simply surviving never allowed. Ethan stood in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt. One of the children noticed him, a girl maybe 8 years old with braids and paint on her face. Are you someone's dad? She asked. No, I'm just looking? Claire's voice. She'd spotted him across the room. She said something to the volunteers, then walked over. Her expression remained carefully neutral. What are you doing here, Ethan? I was walking. Ended up here. I didn't know that I'd be here. This program has been running for 6 years. I volunteered before my sister got sick. They let me come back when I called last week. That's good. That's really good. They stood awkwardly, aware of small eyes watching their interaction. Can we talk? Ethan asked. Please? Claire glanced back at the children. One of the volunteers caught her eye and nodded. We've got this. Outside, Claire said. They stood on the sidewalk as afternoon faded toward evening. The temperature had dropped further. Both of them instinctively buried their hands in pockets. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "I was completely wrong. You were trying to help." "No. I was trying to control the situation because I'm uncomfortable with uncertainty." "You scared me." "I scared you?" "You made me feel something." Real connection. Actual human contact. And my first instinct was to turn that into a business transaction. Something I could manage and optimize. Claire said nothing, waiting. "I canceled everything," Ethan continued. "The foundation program. The funding. The interview. I deleted Christina's contact information. So I won't be tempted to interfere again." That seems extreme. Not as extreme as losing someone because I couldn't stop myself from playing savior. A child's laughter drifted from inside the center. Claire glanced back through the window. "I'm not looking to be saved, Ethan. I'm looking to save myself. That's the only kind of saving that actually works." "I know that now. Do you?" "Because knowing something intellectually and actually changing behavior are two different things." "Then let me prove it. Let me just be present. No fixing. No arranging things. No pulling strings. Just showing up." Claire studied his face. "Why?" "Because when you left, I realized my apartment wasn't empty before. I was empty. You didn't fill that emptiness you showed me it existed. That's a gift, even though it's painful." Pretty words. True words. A pause. Then Claire smiled slightly. "The center needs volunteers for our New Year's program tonight. We're doing a midnight project where kids paint their hopes for the coming year. It's messy and chaotic, and nothing like your usual plans." "I don't have any plans." "Then show up at 9. Wear clothes you don't mind ruining." She turned to go back inside. "Claire?" She stopped. "Thank you for not slamming the door completely." "The door's not open yet, Ethan, but it's not locked either. That's all I can promise right now. That's more than I deserve." Christmas Eve. 1 year later, the penthouse had changed. Plants on the windowsills. Actual books on shelves. Art on walls. Some pieces from Claire, some from the community center children, some from artists neither of them knew but both of them loved. The sterile showroom had become a home. Ethan stood in the kitchen, checking on sugar cookies in the oven, the third batch, because the first 2 batches mysteriously disappeared while cooling. Claire sat at the counter, painting ornaments with a focus she usually reserved for her murals. "You're eating all the cookies," he said without looking up. "I'm quality testing." "That's different. We're supposed to bring 3 dozen to the center tomorrow." "Then you better make 5 dozen. The oven timer dinged. Ethan pulled out perfect golden cookies, setting them on the cooling rack. Claire immediately reached for one. "Still hot," he warned. "I know what I'm about." She bit into the cookie, made a face, set it down quickly. "Okay, you were right. Still hot." Ethan laughed. This had become their rhythm over the past year, small domestic moments that added up to something larger. Claire had never officially moved in. She kept her own studio apartment in Harlem, maintained her independence. But she stayed at the penthouse 3 or 4 nights a week. Kept a toothbrush in the bathroom, left artwork on the walls. They'd built something slowly, carefully, without rushing or forcing. "Your dad called," Claire said, returning to her ornament painting. "Invited us to dinner next week. Did you say yes?" "I said I'd check with you first." Ethan considered this. His relationship with his father had thawed slightly over the past year. They'd started having actual conversations instead of business debriefs. Gerald had even attended one of Claire's gallery showings, though he'd spent most of the evening looking uncomfortable around art. "Let's go," Ethan said. "But we're leaving after 2 hours." "Deal." The front door opened. Footsteps. Then 2 children burst into the kitchen, Mia and Jerome. Siblings from the community center who'd become frequent visitors. Behind them, their mother, Lisa, carried grocery bags. "Sorry we're late," Lisa said. "Subway delays." "You're not late," Claire assured her. "We're making dinner at 6 anyway." This had become another new rhythm, the penthouse as gathering place rather than isolation chamber. People came and went. Children laughed in rooms that once held only silence. Ethan had installed a large table specifically for these group dinners. While Lisa and Claire prepared vegetables, Ethan helped Mia and Jerome with their art projects, paintings they were making as gifts for relatives. He'd learned over the past year that he had no artistic talent whatsoever, but he could offer encouragement and keep supplies organized. "Mr. Thornhill," Mia asked, "are you and Miss Claire going to get married?" "Mia," Lisa called from the kitchen. "That's personal. It's okay," Ethan said. He glanced at Claire, who suddenly seemed very focused on chopping carrots. "I don't know. We haven't talked about it." "You should talk about it," Jerome offered helpfully. "My mom says talking is important. Your mom is very wise." Dinner was chaotic. 7 people around the table, Lisa and her kids, Claire's friend Jennifer from the art center, Claire and Ethan. Conversation flowed over each other, punctuated by laughter and the occasional spilled drink. After dinner, after the kids left with their mom, after Jennifer headed home, Claire and Ethan sat on the couch by the window. The tree they'd decorated together blinked with warm white lights. Below, Manhattan glittered with its usual restless energy. "This is nice," Claire said quietly. "It is. Remember last year, when I asked if you could stay just one night? I remember. I thought that's all it would be. One night of warmth. And then back to reality." Ethan took her hand. "What changed? You did. You stopped trying to save me and started trying to know me. That made all the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflect off low clouds. The apartment, the home, held the warmth of hours spent together. Meals shared. Conversations held. Arguments resolved. A life built piece by piece. "Claire?" "Yeah?" Mia asked a good question earlier. Claire turned to look at him. "Did she?" Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't open it yet. "I bought this 6 months ago. Kept waiting for the perfect moment. Perfect words. Perfect setting." He smiled. "But I realized perfect moments don't exist. Just real ones." He opened the box. Inside, a simple silver band with a small diamond. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing that screamed wealth. Just something beautiful and real. "I don't want to save you," Ethan said. "I don't want to fix you. I just want to keep building this life with you. Messy. Unpredictable. Real." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "That's the best proposal I've ever heard." "That's the only proposal you've ever heard. Still counts as best." She took the ring from the box, slid it onto her finger. "Perfect fit." "Yes," she said, in case that wasn't clear. "Yes." They kissed as snow began falling outside again. The same snow that had been falling the night they met. The same cold city. But nothing else was the same. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said eventually. "Anything. That first night. Why did you stop? When you saw me on those steps, you could have kept walking." Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. "Because you asked if I could stay," he said finally. "Not for help. Not for money. Just for presence. And I realized I'd spent years having people ask me for everything except that. So you stopped. So I stopped. And now I'm not stopping. Not for anything." They stayed on the couch as the evening deepened into night. As the city celebrated another year ending and another beginning. Somewhere below, people were alone. Somewhere, someone was sitting on cold steps, hoping someone would stop. But here, in this apartment that had been empty and was now full, 2 people who'd been lost had found something neither expected, not salvation, just connection, and that turned out to be enough.